everybody, to this week's episode of Inside the GM Studio, a podcast all about the tabletop RPG hobby. I'm your host, Matt.
And I am David.
And there were no games having this last week,
Boo.
which I found quite funny. On Saturday, I was back in my hometown for my oldest nephew's graduation party, and my youngest nephew, who plays D&D, came up to me at one point and he said, "Uncle Matt, you still doing that podcast?" And I said, "Yeah." "You don't listen, you asshole?" And
Little shithead.
and he said, "You guys should do an episode on how to keep a group together. Nobody will ever show up to the game." I'm just like, "What do you mean?" It's just like, we try to set times together to get the group together to play. We haven't played in like 3 weeks. Nobody has time. And I just put my hand on his shoulder and I was just like, "Dude, it's never going to get better. Actually, it's just going to get worse."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's just how it works. And then you get older, because he's never tried a VTT, and I don't even know if he knows what VTTs are. They just play in person. But of course,
Yeah.
when you're younger, I think that's how it's supposed to work.
Agreed.
But I felt bad, of course, and I said, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I'm sure you guys will get together at some point, or maybe you should try a virtual tabletop. And he says, "No, they're just fucking lame, and they don't want to do anything."
Yes. That's if you recall, we were young. That was kind of my thing. Is when you're young, yeah, you have a busy social calendar. As everybody wants to hang out with you, and so there's some stripes of people that like the idea of playing D&D, provided no one wants to play pickup basketball. There's no girl that wants to hang out with them. It's just like so far down their list that like they're canceling every other, like they want to play in an abstract way, but they don't want to play every week. They want to play when they have nothing else to do. And young people often have an abundance of social events. And then when you get to be older, like, you find that the people that were really committed to the game, like when you were younger, if you've been playing a long time, it's like, oh, they had really busy social calendars, uh, or they didn't have really busy social calendars. They just prioritized playing D&D, and they get up and they have kids and they have jobs and they have,
Yep.
a wife and they have other hobbies that they've picked up in the
Yeah,
meantime,
they
and now
have
they're just
weddings
adults.
to go to. They've got birthday parties to go to.
Yeah.
They went to the dentist on Friday, and they can't really talk very well on Saturday.
Exactly. And so that just is the way it goes. It probably doesn't get better than when you're in like middle school and high school. You just have to find the right nerds that want to play the
Yeah.
same amount as you do.
I
And
coughed too hard and I broke a rib.
yeah, so that's just the way it goes. So it's part of the reason when you're young and you find some people that you want to play with, you just keep playing with those same people because you know that rain or shine, they'll try to make time for it to the best of their ability. Like I can't even imagine, given I know you and Patrick and Beto and Cody pretty well and know that you value playing D&D or gaming in some capacity. I and we play sporadically. Like I know all of you are trying to make time for it, and I can't imagine if I had any, even just one or two players that just like didn't really try that hard to make time for it. It
Yeah.
was just there, and they thought it would be there. That would just be like a nightmare.
Also, while I was out of town, I was just hanging out at my mom's house. And while she was off doing mom things and grandma things for the kids, I was sitting back and I thought to myself, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to work on my RPG. I haven't worked on the rules for my game in a while. So I was sitting there and I was going over like my latest draft of mechanics that I have a list of what I want in the game. And I was looking at it, I was just like, man, there's like 6 or 7 different mechanics in here. Is this too many? Because I've been looking back at like Barbarians of Lemira now. Like that is, there's only like 1, 2, 3, 4 real mechanics in it. And I was thinking, man, what if I just dumbed it down to that, where D&D has, let's see, saving throws, skills, attacks, saving throw, inspiration. They got like 5 or 6. And I thought to myself, there's a lot of games that are not that are really going hard on rules and mechanics, because there seem to be adding in a lot of meta currencies, as well as they want them to feel a little bit more active, which is what I like, and that's why I think I have a lot more mechanics in my game. but there's also the ones that you hear about a lot of people playing other than D&D are a lot more rules light, the narrative system out these days. And I've never really thought, oh, of course I have. In the back of my head, I thought about when I finish my game, maybe I'll put it out there on drive through or whatever. Hell, it's free. If people want to try it out, let them try it out, see if they like it. But I've never, when I started making it, I didn't plan on making it for other people. It was always, this is my game. I'm making the game that I want to play. But I still thought about it and was just like, well, what would other people like to play? So I got to thinking about it, and I started writing some stuff down, and I started looking online, and I thought, fuck this, man. I'm gonna go on, and I'm just gonna compile a list through message boards, through AI, whatever I needed to put together a list of what are the bonuses for having mechanics in your game, and what can actually take away from your game if there aren't enough. So I got a nice little list here of five different theories and things to put into and why mechanics and rules are good for your game. Starting with, of course, the illusion of rules light freedom. It is a myth that fewer mechanics equal more role play. Uh, it says on here that good mechanics don't stifle role play; they empower it. Think of rules as the grammar of the storytelling. Without grammar, we can kind of understand each other, but with it, we create poetry, tension, and drama. Mechanics give players a shared language. If you know you have a +5 to deception and advantage under certain conditions, you're not afraid to try lying to a guard, even if you're not a natural improv actor. This one is like pretty much always the forefront whenever it comes to why do we need more rules and why do we need a skill list and things like that. Uh, because that there, and I know David has talked about it before. How do you know that your character is as good as they are when they say they are? When it's more than just they have a +1 in, a attribute that says that yes, they might be naturally good at something, but is it something that they've worked on to make them a little bit better at this skill? And I like to think of there is a molding that you can use to create this character in your head, the character that will drive the story later. That these numbers and rules are going to kind of help mold and create this thing that will mold the story later. But what are your thoughts on this, there, David?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with the sentiment behind this broad concept of what the mechanics or rules or whatever are getting at. They I'm not saying that mechanics can't hinder role playing.
Mm,
But if you start with the precept that it's not about how many rules you have, it's about whether the rules are appropriate for differing situations. And frankly, if a system is really rules light, that means it's applying the same rule across a variety of different things. And given how broad and expansive the idea of role playing should go, which is everything from oral negotiations to combat to sneaking, climbing, variety of different skill sets, as well as any number of dynamics that are exploration based, social
mm,
based. I find it hard to believe that you're going to find a mechanic that just suits all of those scenarios down to the ground very well. And what that leaves you doing, if you don't have it, is either really not having a mechanic for it or shoehorning a mechanic in that doesn't go with this particular circumstance in the game. So if you start with that precept that it's not about having a lot of rules, but having let's call it unity. You should only ever have as many rules in the game as suit circumstances, and that'll have a lot to do with one, what genre your game is, two, the sort of behaviors that you're trying to incentivize the players to do or discourage the players from doing, and then probably the the general mood and feel of your world. So if you're trying to encapsulate something from, say, a genre of fiction, and you're like, okay, this is how this particular thing typically plays out in a cyberpunk novella or a cyberpunk whatever. You're playing in the world of Philip K. Dick. And you go, okay, here are some common things because I'm familiar with this world. And then you go, okay, so here are the precepts. Characters do this and they do that and they do that, and things like this happen, and scenes are kind of cut in this way. And so you go, okay, then now what mechanic achieves that result? And I mean, I'll take, since we've been playing, or been trying to play Barbarians of Limura, I'll just use this as an example. And part of the reason that I think that mechanics are fairly light is because it fits the genre that it's supposed to be, which is a kind of pulpy sword and sorcery genre. So
Mm.
they tend to have a tendency to do, okay, they're going to do theater of the mind. We've bagged on theater of the mind on this show many a times, but it does suit the style of a sword and sorcery game because the battles are usually more cinematic, they're more free flowing, they're not tactical. They're more about telling an interesting story with a lot of panache and flair, and the exact placement isn't as specific, and typically as a battle goes on it gets more detailed, right? So what you might need to know at the beginning of the fight is just how many enemies there are and where they are in relation to you and where you kind of generally are in relation to your cohorts, right? We got one
Mm.
guy at the back and he's got a bow, and you got the two fighters up front and they're like, at the top of the stairs or whatever. And then as things progress, you might detail it a little bit more, but it's the exact placement's really not all that important because there's no opportunity attacks. There's no like all of these other mechanics, and that works great for a tactical game, which would probably matter more in something like probably a game like Star Wars or something would benefit more from a much more like tactical grid approach because it's more firefights and
Mm.
lightsaber duels and shit. So you need to have a mechanic that fits all of those aspects. And so if you were building a system from the ground up, you go like, well, how many mechanics are necessary here? And no more. And so the reason that it provides, I mean, I like the grammar analogy. That's pretty good. It's a rule, but I like to think of it more like the connective tissue that holds something together. The reason that statistical representations of a character are important is that those statistical representations give characters identity. And
Mm.
when you can see it in a concrete way, like here are the things my character is good at and weak at and mediocre at, then you can play to your strengths and downplay your weaknesses. And this can be rife with role playing opportunities. Maybe not in a role playing sense of the word where you're like acting out the drama, but in a fight, a character doing something that's more in line with his character, a rogue who's good at sneaking, tries to use the shadows to his advantage to skulk over behind a pillar and wait for an opportune moment to hurl a dagger at an enemy that can't see him. That's just as much role playing as any dialogue that he might
Mm.
have. And when you have those things like codified, then they give the characters identity and meaning behind what it is that they do, and this emboldens their persona in the game. Whereas if you have a really super rules light system, because you want to allow players to do anything and everything and be anyone, they end up being no one, and all the characters end up feeling kind of the same, and they end up feeling like they have the same capabilities, and the only differences are the differences among the players. And this can disenfranchise players that are less outspoken, players that are less creative, players that are less bold. Unless you got a whole troupe of actors that really like that, I would
Mm.
imagine that the rules I've said before are kind of a safety net for neophyte players, and they allow players that are more adept at leveraging the rules to come up with new and creative ways to leverage them, to do neat things that entertain the DM, and provide a little bit of an example for the less experienced players.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. The end here, this part, because of the players that we've had in the past and plenty of people that I've played with, I don't want to, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. I'm not saying anything negative about it. But like,
Do it. Throw them
Pat,
under the bus, bro. Who you talking about?
uh,
You're talking shit.
Mike, Patrick, Beto sometimes, but Patrick's gotten way better at it, where we don't really say like I'm gonna lie to them or I'm gonna try to deceive them. Like we
Hmm.
just go in and we say something now. Like Cody and I have
Yeah,
always been that we just jump in and say something. Patrick
yeah,
has been going along with it. Beto is getting better at it, but Mike was just never that dude. He was just kind of like, I want to lie to him, like short, simple. That's totally cool. And like it was saying in the piece here, if you're not a natural improv actor, uh, David and I both have the same thing that we say, but we want it's not exactly what we want to hear when we say what do you say. We don't really give a shit the exact wording of what you say. It's more of how do you present yourself and like what do you want to get across to them. Like the number on your character sheet is what really matters, but if you want to try to say like if I'm going to go up and I'm going to tell them that a dragon stole the loot from their safe, that's going to be a little bit harder to pull than saying that it just wasn't you and that you saw somebody else come in through the dead of the night that looked like this.
yeah.
So it's not like that. When people usually hear that, well, what do you say? They feel attacked. Like, dude, I don't fucking know. I'm not a playwright. How am I supposed to know what I'm going to say? He's like, oh, you don't have to go verbatim of what your character says. Just give
And
me a basis.
that's an adjustment that I've made too, because what do you say to me? I never realized comes off as what words do you speak in character,
Yeah. Hmm.
and I used to be a little more. I think I'm a little more forgiving about this now. Like, look, you know, there's several ways to get kind of mood and stuff across that could even be under the realm of role playing, right? Like saying, "Oh, well, Grufnir, expresses his disdain and scowls at the elf as he comes in and grumbles something under his breath, um, as he downs his ale and goes off in a huff to the other end of the room," is like, okay, that's fine. I mean, that's a description of your general attitude, the general mood. I don't need to necessarily, but if you wanted to be like, be in character and be like, oh, does it, did somebody open a bottle of vinegar in here and then I spit at the ground and I, clang my ale until the froth comes off the top and standing up and throwing my shoulders back, like that's cool too. Like they both achieve the same mood and tenor that you would want, and there may be an opportunity to leverage some skills you have. But saying I want to do a deception check, like that's not necessarily as that doesn't give me any insight into like how or why, because there's a variety of ways for you to do that, right? You can be deceptive by being a smooth talker, by being just a total like, being really evasive, or just, you know, a variety of ways, browbeating people, right?
Hmm.
Look at Ben Shapiro, right? Like he seems to be pretty good at like convincing people. He just fucking browbeats people and gish gallops the fuck out of them until they just kind of say uncle or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, and he, from what I can tell, isn't always being totally forthright about everything. And so that's a kind of a good side note into it depends on how you're if you view the rules as a prison, then they will be.
Hmm.
Like I guess is the ultimate bullet point on that front.
Uh, let's go to the mechanics. Give stories weight and create narrative stakes. So, with an example, let's say your rogue wants to leap across a collapsing bridge to grab a falling artifact. The GM could just say, "Sure, you make it," but there is no tension in that. Like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
you could describe it all you want to make it sound as heroic and as much tension as you want. Uh, but if you do it with roll and acrobatics, DC 17, if you fail by 5 or more, you fall into the chasm. Suddenly, all the players are on edge. Those numbers matter, the risk matters, and it helps bring in that tension and drama into the game itself. Numbers make victories feel earned, not gifted, and defeats feel meaningful, not arbitrary. This is the literal G in RPG. This is the game. And that game helps when these numbers come up. They mean something to you. And I know a lot of the hippie game people, the narrative players, is just like, oh, but that's for grognards. All of a sudden they think of it's like the TTRPG jocks. They want numbers. They want that sort of thing. Uh, But that's the part of the game, the actual game I love. I love that everybody gets up, they stand up from their chairs as they watch one person make a roll. I love that sort of shit.
It's and if you're more narratively inclined, I'm probably not as, let's say, numerically inclined
Hmm.
as all that. Like I hardly ever give like this is your DC. If you fail by 5 or more, X happens.
Right.
But might be inclined to use more narrative language to go like, okay, like, well, what's your bonus, right? What's your total bonus to your acrobatics? And someone's like, well, it's a +4. You go, it's going to be pretty difficult for you, and if you do poorly, it's probably not going to go so well, right? You can kind of talk in more vague sense, like that the if you don't want to like break the role playing element of it, where it's like the character knows precisely how good they have to do, but if you're endeavoring to do something like in real life, if you skateboard, right, and you're going to go like, I'm going to try this jump, like you probably have a pretty good idea of whether you're going to make it easily, whether it's going to be right at the edge of your skill, or whether it's something that's beyond your capabilities. And this goes for a variety of things, pool, sports of any sort. Like, you just kind of have a good idea of where your talents lie, and you can try to quantify in a or qualify, I guess, instead of quantify, instead of giving them a hard number if you wanted to err a little more on the side of the narrative. But there should be a tension between like what what hinges on the roll of a die. And this is another good thing that Barbarians of Lemura is pretty specific about. It's like general tasks, like don't overuse the damn rules. Just because you have rules for everything doesn't mean you need to have a player's rolling dice for everything. And as a
True.
general rule, it's like you, I don't know how many. I usually comes up in our game with strength, right? Players are like, oh, I want to like lift this thing, I want to break this thing, and it's like, and they're like, should I do an athletics check? And I go, well, what's your strength? And they're go like, well,
Hmm.
I have an 18 strength. It's like, yeah, you can just break it, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need a roll from you because there's no dramatic tension here. Nothing hinges on
Right.
it. Now, if you were trying to dive off a cliff and grab another character's arm by like one arm and then like climb up like while holding like a treasure chest full of shit that's like 50 pounds, like there's a lot of dramatic stakes there, and things could go very, very poorly. And so, yeah, you generally have rules in D&D anyway. This is how far you can jump,
Hmm.
and this is how high you can jump. And that's just a good metric. It's not, I mean, it's a mechanic, but it really just kind of allows you to understand what sort of scale you're playing on. But if something's right there at the edge tension, where it's like maybe a character could make it, maybe under duress, or if they got good enough on a check, save those rolls for when there's something at stake. And if you do, then you can lean more heavily into the actual mechanics, because players typically like to feel that they have agency over what happens. And if they're leveraging a skill, knowing full well what the stakes are, they're willing to accept failure or success because they know, like, I'm best poised, I'm the strongest, I'm the fastest, I'm the wisest, and here are the table stakes of what could happen, and I'm opting into doing it, knowing that there's X vague sense that I might fail, or that it would be really miraculous if I succeeded. Then their failures don't really hit as hard. Where if they feel like things are just kind of arbitrary, like, oh, like you can do it if I say you can do it, or you can't do it if I say you can't do it, or then there's no gradient. It's just a yes or no, and then the game quickly becomes flat, and it has a tendency to stifle creativity instead of encouraging players to pursue things that have high stakes where they're capable, and it might even be like an edge case or something. That's typically the way it goes. Just fights are kind of naturally this way already, but you can embed that in pretty much any aspect of the game, I would imagine.
Yeah. I had that not exactly blow up on me or backfire on me, but my work group, one of my players, Jeff, my good friend Jeff, uh, he tried to open a lock one day, and normally when there was nothing going on around, he started to pick up on that. I was just like, yeah, it's all right. If it wasn't a very intricate lock, I was like, yeah, sure. You can get down and you pick the lock, open it, no problem. And then there was one day they found a chest, and he's just like, oh, check if it's locked. Yes, it is locked. All right, I'm gonna pick it and open it up. And I was like, all right, can you roll a lock pick for me? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. Hey, wait a minute. You you usually always just say it's okay unless there's something
Usually,
going on.
always.
And I was like, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, it's a masterwork lock this time, so I want to see if you could roll it without breaking it. Oh, sure. And it was just because it was trapped. That's all it was.
Right.
And he knew it.
Yeah, it kind of does kind of backfire sometimes. But yeah, I mean, something like unlocking a chest, unless you're doing it, you're trying to unlock a door while enemies are barreling down
Hmm.
at you or something, usually is not going to be super high stakes. You just go like, okay, it's either a thing that I can do or it's a thing that I can't do. And there's not much drama in that. And plenty of plenty of games have mechanics that are, you know, specific. Like you noted meta currency, right? Like some games have uh, stress levels, or they have I mean, the Call of Cthulhu's got it's got a you got to have a sanity score. It's like
Hmm.
built in, right? And so I think that might have been in your notes. And so leveraging those mechanics when the stakes are the highest, they help bolster the storytelling because there's something at stake.
Hmm. Yeah. Then I wanted to bring up uh, with that, like, recently I just started playing Blades in the Dark again.
Mm,
Blades in the Dark is based off of PBTA, Powered by the Apocalypse, which is a more narrative based style game.
right.
But Blades of the Dark is loaded with mechanics. It has clocks, it has flashbacks, it has okay, what a stress, positions and effects. It has a whole bunch of stuff, and like it says in here, they're not exactly just fluff. They're form-fitting drama engines. They are meant to help mold the drama and create the story itself. Uh, it is the mold, the tools that we use to create the story itself through these mechanics. I'd love that one. It actually came up, and I saw that on the list when I was doing the research on this. And I love that they brought in Blades in the Dark because that's what made me fall in love with it. I know I've told it on the show here, but I know that there's always this episode is always somebody's first episode. I have never been a fan of Powered by the Apocalypse. The day that it came out, I read over it a little bit and I was like, it's not for me. That was the day that one page games and hippie games started becoming very popular, and Powered by the Apocalypse exploded because people could hack it really easy and they could make it whatever they want. And people were a lot more interested in narrative style than actual mechanic based games. And then my buddy Dan, that I play with on my Thursday game, he was like, I want to play Blades in the Dark. I was like, isn't that a Powered by the Apocalypse game? Fuck that shit. I don't want to do that. He's like, oh, it's based on it, but there's so much stuff that's different. It's better than PBTA. We got to try it out. At first, I still didn't like it, but by the end of the first session, I was so hooked. I went and bought the book. Well, I had to have the physical book because I wanted it in my collection because I thought it was that fucking good.
It's it's yeah. I mean, I've noted other, like when you represent something numerically, it can bolster your character's journey because it's quantifiable. So like the one of the things I liked about the Mongoose Conan game, which there wasn't a lot that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I thought was really cool is that you have a reputation score.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that like tracks with your character's growth and their adventures, right? Like you grow in popularity, and it's like the most valuable thing you have in the game, right? It's more valuable than any item you can get. It's more valuable than any stat because it's like if people know who you are, like you're famous, then everything just becomes easier. Like every interaction you have with every person, as well as like cowing enemies, like gaining influence, the whole adventure just becomes easier. And so every time you introduce yourself to someone, you know, I am Grognar of the Wilds or whatever, you do a reputation roll and you go, boom, if you get below your reputation, this person knows who you are, and all of your interactions with them are better. That's a really cool way to kind of codify codify your progress as a character from a role playing standpoint. In recent years, alignment has kind of fallen out of favor in
Mm,
D&D, but it can be leveraged in a similar way to kind of keep characters like on track and accountable for what their characters are supposed to be about.
mm.
Um, it's a little bit of a flat system, so I understand that it's not the best, but it is technically a mechanic that you could leverage that gives some sort of gravity. I also think in the Conan game there was like if you used magic, it was like this rising like I forget what they called it, but it corrupted you. It like
Mm-hmm.
made you like basically fucked with your soul because it's
Yeah.
just so magic is like evil in the world, and it just if you use it too much, then it just you kind of build up these sinister things, and your character ends up like kind of thinking more malevolently and gets power hungry. It's a mechanic that really synergizes very well with the world that it's in and dovetails nicely with role playing opportunities.
Yeah, they always had that rule in Dark Sun, and I know even when they were talking about bringing Dark Sun to fifth edition, which I already watched a nice old video. God damn it, I can't remember who did it. Either way, nice British folk that talked about why Dark Sun will never come to fifth edition. Uh, but one of the coolest things I thought about, because that was their sword and sorcery setting for D&D,
Hmm.
is that arcane magics, um, it wasn't calling corrupted, it was something else. But either way, whenever you used it, you either hurt yourself, you hurt other beings around you, or nature around you. And because magic, that's what it did. It drew life force from whatever was around you to help fuel it. And thus, if you weren't a sorcerer king, uh, it was illegal to be a magician, as well as you were just feared. If you had magic, you were feared. So
Hmm.
psionic players were really a lot bigger. And if you were a magician, you better be a damn good liar to say that if you got caught doing a trick, he was just like, "Oh no, I'm just a psionicist. I'm not that."
Well,
But of course,
yeah,
he
and
would.
I think there's a similar thing that happens in any sword and sorcery, where it's like the people that use magic and they use it really adeptly are corrupt and evil. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just baked into the mechanics. So it's like you think, like if you look at the Conan movies in particular, he has a wizard with him. But if you look at the things that the wizard really does, like he's very careful about when he uses magic and what he
Mm.
uses it for. And it's really not that much. Like in the first movie, he uses it to bring Conan back, but he also makes it clear that there's a very steep cost for using this level of magic. And then like what is he tries to open a door in
Yeah.
the second movie. Does he do anything magical? Oh, he faces off with the duel with the other wizard. Um and there's even a mechanic in the Conan RPG, at least there used to be, where it was like you lock eyes with another wizard and basically you're in like a battle of minds,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was kind of cool too. I didn't really like to use the magic mechanic in that, but again, it fits the setting and it provides you a way that's quantifiable, much like the sanity score in Call of Cthulhu, that but just kind of
Mm-hmm.
degrades over time, and so you have to weigh those costs, and though weighing those costs and making those decisions is absolutely a role-playing situation.
Mm. One of the big reasons I like to use mechanics to create my characters, and the way that I like mechanics to run, was one of the main reasons I started moving away from D&D and into other games, is because they opened up a little bit more freedom to their rules.
Hmm.
Um, this one here, a smart player doesn't just look at their sheet like a checklist. They look for synergies, clever combos, and weird hacks. They push the system, and when a GM engages with the mechanics too, you get this awesome dynamic where the game becomes a collaborative puzzle box. Example: in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the 3 action economy lets players mix movement, spells, and strikes in wild combination. That's not restrictive, it's liberating. It turns combat into a tactical dance, not a slog. This is one thing I want to really test out in the new Pathfinder edition.
Hmm.
Instead of saying you have one move, one action, one minor action, it's just you have three. You have 3 actions, and you can use them however you want. Sometimes spells will say they take one to however many actions. Sometimes even some attacks, if you are playing a fighter and it has a certain attack, it will say you can do this for 2 actions. But you
Hmm.
just have 3, and you can use them to do whatever you want. You want to move 3 times, you can move 3 times. You don't want to move at all, guess what? You got another action to use. And I like that. I like having an option because I don't know. I do. I think tactically when I'm playing because that's the game to me, and I like having the options to kind of mix things up. Uh, and that's kind of what keeps me going, and that's what gives me all the weird, funny tinglies when I'm playing the game. What's next here? Clarity. Uh, Here's one of the most important benefits of a strong mechanical backbone: clarity. When the rules are clear and the numbers are on the table, everyone knows what's happening. New players feel more confident, veteran players feel more engaged. There's less arguing, less ambiguity, and more focus on the story. And honestly, when a new player asks, "What can I do?" a good set of mechanics gives them an answer. It's not whatever you want, which can be overwhelming. It's, "Here's your move set, here's the risk, now make your play." I kind of remolded this. This isn't exactly what it said when I read this originally, but when I read it originally, it said something a little bit more like, "Let the players run wild, and the mechanics will guide their way," or something like that. But then I
Hmm.
thought of David and a lot of the things that he said in the past, even when we were kids first playing, and some of the tips that I heard him give other players as well when they asked, "What can I do?" And David wouldn't just say, "You could do what you want," because I would say that, and David would always say, "You can't really do anything you want." And
Yeah,
he would
true.
give a little bit more information. And that is another reason why we need the rules, we need the mechanics, because not every player is totally creative. They're not as imaginative as others. They're not as creative as others, and they're definitely not as constructive as others. Like me, when I like to build characters, some people do. They just like to pick that class, and they just whatever that class gives me, I want that because that's all I want to do. Uh, so with this, it gives them a not a railroad. I'm thinking of railroading the players. It gives
A
them a
roadmap.
roadmap to follow in order for them to
It's
play their character.
Yeah, I've been on this Jag before. I was glad. I was like, okay, well, I don't know, like if you came up with this bullet point, or
Mm-hmm.
if it was kind of crowdsourced, or if it was whatever. But yeah, I've said this repeatedly, where the rules are a safety net for new players, and they're also a safety net for the GM against power gamers, where it's like, okay, this is the rule set that you're operating with. It's a better thing when a player asks, "What can I do?" to just ask them, "Well, what do you want to do?"
Mm-hmm.
And then they, because I've said this before, it's like there's something about like the back and forth, or the sometimes there can feel like there's some sort of urgency in a game that, like, well, I said that I did this and now I messed up, and it's like, no, 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 like let's just think of it like a staging thing. Like, let's imagine what your player would do on their turn if you could do whatever you wanted. And they go, okay, well, I'd like to be able to do this, this, and this. And you go, okay, well, let's say, are you trained in acrobatics? Well, no. Do you have any bonus to your dexterity? No, I have no bonus to my dexterity. All right, then, probably sliding across the bar and hand springing off the table into the center of the room and doing a cartwheel while you throw something is not going to be in the realm of things that you can really do easily.
Mm-hmm.
You can attempt it, but it's going to be very hard. And you go, okay, well, maybe I don't want to do that. And you go, okay, well, what else would you like to do instead? And you kind of just play this thought experiment with the players until you arrive at like some idea of what they're trying to achieve. Give them the mechanics that would go along with it, so they know the stakes. To the previous point we were making, they know what they stand to gain and fail, and how difficult it's likely to be, either in concrete numbers or in a vague sense. Then then go, okay, that's a thing. Well, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to like, hurl a lightning bolt at him. It's like, okay, well, do you have a spell?
Yeah.
No, I'm not a spellcaster. It's like, well, then that's just full on not a thing you can do. If you wanted to be able to cast spells, you should have taken a spell casting class. And you're like, oh, is that what that is? Or it's like, yeah, okay. Or, whatever. Oh, I have this spell and I want to, shoot it at this guy. Okay, it's a line spell, so it's going to go 30 feet straight out in front of you. There's only like three enemies that it's likely to hit, and it'll do a lot of damage to them, but it'll also get rid of one of your spell slots. How many spell slots does it say you have for third level or whatever? And they go like, oh, I only have two. So is it worth hitting all these enemies? You'll likely annihilate the shit out of them because they're pretty low level enemies. Oh, is that going to be overkill? Yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit overkill. Well, maybe I have another spell that can kind of get all of them and
Mm.
is just going to, damage them quite a bit. Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you got on your list? You just kind of have this dialogue. And then when you do that enough with players and they understand what it is they can do, you're empowering them to be like players like Matt or players like Cody who are like, okay, I'm going to go over here. For my action, I'm going to slash at the guy with the sword and I get an 18. I'm pretty sure that's a hit. I hit it with his armor class of 17 last time. I do, 18 points of damage with my sneak attack. On top of that, I'm going to bonus action, disengage away from him. I move 30 feet over here behind the pillar. I crouch down and I wait for any enemies to approach me. My turn is over. It's like, fuck. Holy mechanics knowledge, Batman, right? But it also allows for like, that's a seamless turn that like demonstrates who this character is. They know their capabilities, they know what they can do, and they're using it to the best of their abilities. Because when you look at anybody that does anything at an elite level, and I always point to athletes, they don't hem and haw around, like a fucking guy like Steph Curry knows exactly what his role on the team is, exactly what he's good at, and how to go about doing it. And it's a matter of like, okay, crossover dribble here, guy. I'm gonna go get open, pass over here, move. Like he's got the action economy of being like a point guard or whatever he is, down to a T. And so uh, good players will eventually pick up on that as long as you don't make them feel like there's some pressure to make some decisions. And the fuzzier the rules are, the more they're likely to feel like it rewards players who are just super creative. It rewards players who are constantly like kind of pushing the boundaries because they're really mushy and soft of like what they can do. And then it can just kind of create bedlam in your game, and you don't want that. So
To kind of wrap this up a little bit, uh, nobody is saying that every game needs to be a crunchy math fest. There's definitely room for narrative driven rules light systems in the hobby, but too often mechanics get painted as the enemy of good storytelling. And I really do believe that, and I think it's a big mistake. Um, a well-designed system with thoughtful mechanics can make your tabletop RPG experience much richer, tenser, and way more rewarding. Uh, so next time somebody, you know, groans at a thick rule book or just decides that they don't want to roll dice for some reason, remind them that the numbers don't kill the story. The numbers are tools that help shape the story. Everybody has their choices. I do. I love a good crunchy game every now and then. Hell, I've talked about how Shadowrun is one of my favorite games ever, and it barely ever gets crunchier than fucking Shadowrun. But I also have much enjoyed our games in our so far one game of Barbarians of Lemura. I
mhm.
really enjoy it. I love ICRPG. I like Shadow Dark. I like rules light ish systems. I think they make great for small campaigns or one shots. Uh, but yeah, don't give people shit when they have a crunchier system, thinking that it's going to just bog down the night. As people learn, it'll get a lot quicker and it will help a lot. A lot of times, this came up with my Thursday group when we were trying to find out what game we wanted, the new game we were going to play after we stopped playing the ICRPG Cyberpunk game. And on the list was Pathfinder Second Edition. And as much as I want to play that game, I knew for a fact that there was at least two people in the group that is not for. It's just a bad move. They wouldn't get it at all, and I don't think they would ever even be able to learn everything in it and enjoy it the way that we do on with our Thursday game. But any final thoughts from you there, Dave?
Yeah, I you touched on something that I wanted to comment on, which most people, I would suspect, when they describe something that's quote crunchy, you could choose to read that two ways. One, it just means that there are a lot of rules. So when people say I really love crunchy systems, they mean they just like things that have a lot of variety of rules. There's nothing wrong with that. Typically, when people that don't like lots of rules say something is crunchy, they're using it, if they're using it derisively, it's like, ah, it's a really fucking crunchy system. It's a
Mm,
grind. Typically what they're getting at is that there's a glut of rules. That balance that I was talking about earlier hasn't been achieved. It's like there's a rule for everything and there doesn't need to be a rule for every single thing. Part of that's going to be how quickly you pick up and understand and can remember mechanics.
mm.
Because you've been playing Shadowrun long enough, it probably doesn't feel crunchy to you because now
No,
you just know all of the mechanics super well and you
yeah.
don't need to like look it up or get bogged down. But the
I know.
some
Hold on. I got to
games,
bring up a because I just brought this up to some other guys that want to play Shadowrun, and I told them that they would hate it, and they said why. And this was the example I gave to them. And I know David has talked about this too, that about games that have, and he just talked about it earlier in this episode, where there's a rule for goddamn everything. In Shadowrun, in order to throw a grenade at somebody, first of all, you have to roll to see how far you can throw it, if you can even make it to your target. Second of all, you have to roll to see how long it takes for the grenade to go off. And then third of all, you have to roll for the direction that it bounces. Oh, and sometimes you do have to roll to see how many times it bounces. So that's when they say crunchy, that is crunchy.
because when games are overwrought with rules, they often siphon the drama out of a moment. I want to
Mm,
throw a grenade. And you go, okay, great. You have been playing long enough that you probably just go, okay, roll, 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 roll. All right,
yep.
you throw it 300, 300 feet. You throw it 150 feet. It bounces, two times over to the left, and here's what's there. And here's it explodes, and here's how much damage it does to which targets. But for those of us that are uninitiated, the time between I'm going to hurl a grenade and here's who it hits and what the damage is like a solid like minute and a half or 2 minutes of kind of like looking up and understanding what happens. And in that time, what should have been a pregnant moment of tension has now just become a slog of maths and dice rolls.
Yeah, and clickety
And
clack.
and right, and no one likes that. And so if you're the kind of person that the reason that crunchier gamers tend to be more experienced gamers is because they can just pick up a set of like mechanics and numbers, internalize, remember, and streamline them very fast. And they like what it offers, which is all the things that we've already listed. They're just it doesn't bog them down anymore. And
Mm,
so I don't suspect that people necessarily have an aversion to more rules because when there's a game that virtually has no rules, it tends to get pretty boring and not feel like a game.
mm-hmm.
So we each have some threshold where it's overwrought, and that has to do with our experience, this like our past experiences playing games,
Mm,
how adept we are, the experience that we're looking for, right? We're playing a sword and sorcery game. We want it to be quick and fast paced and like, hyper heroic and not really gritty. But another game might be all about like the accumulation of like managing resources
yeah.
and like, slogging through a dungeon as like, 1,000 little cuts are building up on your guy, and that creates the tension that you want for a specific type of game. Or it might be more of a psychological horror drama that, the rising tide of your sanity dripping away as you solve this mystery, then that is the sort of mechanic that you want. There's a reason that in Call of Cthulhu, the combat mechanics are just like you shoot a gun and you do 8 damage or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just like fucking
Yeah.
super duper simple.
You roll 2d10, find out what number between 1 and 100, and if you roll below your score, do you? You succeed.
Right, there's not a lot of sophistication to the combat mechanics, but
Yep.
we feel really hosed if there were no sophistication to the combat mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons because
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of an essential part of the game. And so we all understand this at least conceptually where we just want certain mechanics to be in certain places at certain times. And I mean, I get it if you're an initiate or even just kind of someone that doesn't want to be to have everything quantified, which, to be clear, not everything does need to be quantified, but that will depend on a variety of metrics.
Um, Also, for all of you out there that are playing a game that have already learned a game, and then another game is brought up, and you feel, for some reason, you feel uh, intimidated that you have to relearn something, and that what they're asking you to play sounds really complicated. Don't worry about it. It's usually not complicated at all. When I first started learning to play D&D in a D&D with David, that is actually, there's less mechanics in a D&D than I know children screaming in the background. Uh,
Too
there's
many
less,
mechanics at their game.
oh, there's less mechanics in AD&D than there is in 5th edition. If you think about it, it was a very bare bones. Is just some of the way that the math worked was a little intimidating, but that was about it, really. Uh, Whenever you learn a new game, just take your time and see what you pick up. I'm sure whoever is running the game really wants this game to succeed, so they're going to make it as easy as possible for all of you to learn the new game. And learning new stuff is fun. It's awesome. So I think we're going to leave this episode on that. For all of you out there, what do you think? Am I wrong? Are you a rules Nazi? Are you a narrative hippie? Tell me. Tell us. Send it to insidethegmstudio@gmail.com and let us know what you thought. Or have I converted you, maybe? Have we talked about the rules enough that you say, maybe I will put down my PBTA game and maybe I will try this Barbarians of the Moor. Send it to insidethegmstudio@gmail.com and let us know. Or you can always come over and watch us live, usually every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/InsideTheGMStudio. Also, please send us in some other stuff to talk about, too. Give us some topics. We love getting new stuff. But for this week, for Inside the GM Studio, I have been your host, Matt.
And I am David.
A good night.